This is an excerpt of a recent Power Up webinar presenting the color tools in Apple Final Cut Pro 10.6. Hi, my name is Larry Jordan. In this short tutorial, I'll show how to use high dynamic range media, called HDR, in a standard dynamic range project, like HD, in Final Cut. This is a standard dynamic range timeline. And I have an HDR clip. This was shot with a Panasonic EVA-1 camera. It's shot log, so it's not RAW, but it's a log file, and log is specifically designed for HDR video. And it looks terrible. Almost all log footage looks this kind of washed out gray simply because of how it's shot. The very first thing that you want to do is to go to the info inspector over here and apply a LUT that compensates for the camera that shot the footage. But you can't do it when this menu down here is set to basic. You need to click the basic menu and set it to general. When you set it to general, the LUTs show up. And I want to change the camera LUT from none to the Panasonic V-Log, which is the format that camera was shot in, and already we see an improvement in the quality of the picture. Now here we have a choice. We can either do a manual color grade, which will work fine, or we can apply an effect called HDR tools. I'll do it manually first. We'll open up the color board and look at the scopes. Black levels are too high. I always set black levels first, put them right at the bottom. I've got the beautiful white foam. I'm going to make that pop by putting it right to 100% and tweak the grayscale levels just to make as much detail visible as possible. And this is before and this is after. Isn't that cool? Because I've got this great recording range in grayscale, I can save the detail in the highlights and save the detail in the shadows, even though it's going into a very restricted SDR timeline. I can still recover more of that and make the image look better than if I shot at SDR, where either the highlights would be blown out or the shadows would be crushed. Now the other option, let's go back here and reset the parameter, is to apply an effect down here called HDR tools, and I'll just simply drag it onto the clip. What HDR tools does, with the clip selected, go up here, it allows me to convert HDR to Rec. 709, which I don't recommend, because you're either shooting HLG or PQ. Convert HLG to Rec. 709 or PQ to Rec. 709 or between formats. I'm going to set this to HLG to Rec. 709. And things now are really crushed. So we're going to go back to the color wheels. Again, always work with the black levels first. Make the black levels sit down here. Pull the highlights up. Pull the highlights up. Keep pulling. Even though we're reached the top of the range, you can pull the arrow higher. A little bit too high. We'll pull the shadows down. Pull the midtones down. And pull the highlights down. There we go. And this is before. And this is after. Is that cool? It may be that you can get the effect you want without using HDR tools. It may be that you have to transcode from PQ to HLG, in which case HDR tools becomes necessary. It isn't that one is required. It's whichever one allows you to get your work done. As long as you're within spec from 0 to 100, whether you use HDR tools or not is a personal choice. It's not required technically. It's whichever works best for your project. Phew, that is a lot of stuff to cover. So let me tackle questions. I know we're running a bit long, but I want to answer your questions before we run out of time. Dave asks, Larry, I'd like to hear your thoughts about using the Rec. 2020 for SDR video with a higher than 8 bits color. SDR video is always going to end up being 8 bits. But that doesn't mean that we can't work with higher bit depth video and put it into the SDR project. Just as we shoot 4K to put into a 1080 project, the 4K gives us more room to play with in framing and compressing the file, reducing its size. Same thing with 10-bit video. I can put 10-bit video into an SDR timeline and take advantage of the extra bit depth, and like we saw with this HDR clip, we can make it look good, even though ultimately it's going to end up with 8 bits. So I don't have a problem with taking HDR video and putting it into an SDR timeline because it's going to make the color grade look better because I've got more flexibility, the same way I have more pixels to work with in 4K video in a 1080 project. Hello, Dave. So even if it's deliverable in Rec 709, he writes, if we shoot, say, 10-bit color, we would benefit from using the wide gamut HDR. No, wide gamut HDR creates an HDR project. That's not what we do. When we're working in SDR, we leave it in Rec 709 color space. We're just simply taking a clip that's got more color information and putting it into a Rec 709 project. You notice I didn't change this project to make it HDR. Wide gamut HDR is an HDR project. It's got to have HDR shading. It's got to use HDR clips. That's not what we're doing. We're working with a simple Rec 709 project, putting HDR video into it and color grading it so it looks as good as it can. This was an excerpt of a recent Power Up webinar presenting the color tools in Apple Final Cut Pro 10.6. For the complete version of this online training, please visit my store at larryjordan.com/store and look for Webinar 331. By the way, when you need to stretch your training dollars, membership in our video training library saves you money and time. You can access all our videos for a low monthly price of only $19.99. That's almost 2,000 movies, hundreds of hours, on a wide variety of subjects. Plus, premium members can download practice media and projects. Our training covers a variety of software. We update it monthly, and for more information, visit larryjordan.com/membership. And thanks.